Day one, guys.
All right, that's good. Takes a while to learn those things. I'm going to steal a little bit of your time and walk you through some of the models online, and then also do some histology online, so you can hear the horse's rear end what you are supposed to know. So I'm going to use my favorite website, Carpenter's one. We're going to go through from top to bottom. So, someone tell me on here where my external nares would be. What is that in English? That's your nostril. Stick your finger up your nose. So what do you call this area where the boogers hang out? Vestibule. Vestibule means entrance. Okay, so what's A, B, and C, Smarties? Concha, right? Which one's A? Superior. B? Middle. C? Inferior. Okay, so what about the lines between them? Meatus. So the concha, the bumps, literally means like fungus. The meatus, like you learned last time, are the holes. So you have your conchae and your meatus. So what in the world is this hollow thing in your forehead? Frontal sinus or paranasal sinus. There's a sphenoidal one. So now we got the palates. So letter H. Which one is that? Heart. H. Right? It's the roof of your mouth, the bony one.
Wait,
so,
H is
hard palate. What about S? Soft palate. What about I? It's the uvula, the dilly dangle that hangs down. Right? So we got basically our upper mouth kind of done. We're gonna scroll on down here. That's right here. After the dome, uvula is the extension of that. Where the roof of your mouth ends, the bone is, the next part's the soft, which is then the uvula.
Can you feel that?
You can, you stick your tongue way back. Yes. It's your nose.
Oh, it's just your nose.
Because line your books will come in with it.
So then how does the roof of your mouth? Yeah. Can you say soft as the back?
Went too far, too fast. I forgot. Okay, so I'm going to do the pharynx word. What does pharynx mean? Kind of throat, back of mouth land. So if I drew a line on a quiz between here and here and said, what region is that? You'd say nasopharynx, meaning the back of my mouth near my nose. I went between here and here, you'd say oro, because mouth, oro. And then the next chunk here to here, laryngo, meaning the back of my throat near my larynx. So you just divide, basically draw a line through the hard palate, draw a line through kind of the epiglottis, and you divided your pharynx. That's where we get some of these words. So let's do right here, you. What is you?
Can't see it.
I can see it. It's right here.
Internal.
Internal nares, my internal nostril. You send your finger up from your mouth into your nose for boogers. Go through here. So external here, internal here. W is pointing to a hole, which actually V is. That's the opening of your auditory tube. Remember your station tube from last term drains your throat. So it pops out here. F is right next to it. What is F?
Tonsil.
That's a tonsil. Which one? Adenoid or pharyngeal. They are synonyms. So I have my internal nares, the opening of my auditory tube, and then my pharyngeal tonsil or adenoid. They're all in the back of my nose, in my nasopharynx. We scroll down to my oropharynx, my mouth throat gland. Let's see. What letter do you think is the palatine tonsil? K. That's the one that when you get your tonsils out, the ones in the throat, that's what they're talking about. There's also a tonsil at T. Can anyone guess what that is? That's your lingual or on your tongue. So you have tonsils on your tongue. You have two on the side of your throat, which are the palatines. Those are your tonsils. You have to reach way behind. You can. You just gotta basically gag to death.
I heard the little thing that hangs down.
So what was I again? That's the uvula, right? The dilly dangle in your throat. Okay. So now we're going to spend some time in the larynx down here. Fauces. You go to faucets in your bathtub, right? You open your mouth, and look in. That's your fauces. That's the hole of your mouth where the air would go. So this here is your faucet. So basically the opening the oral cavity where your air goes through your mouth. Ah.
Anything in here?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
It's like a bathtub, you open the faucet. Ah. Okay. So, fauces. I never asked them. Fauces, it just doesn't do much for me. Fauces. And let's look at this picture. Which one's the larynx? And or one, right? This whole thing on top of your trachea, that's your larynx. So we're supposed to know a lot of things in a larynx. So hint, hint, this is an important one for EMT, nursing, we spend a lot of time with it. Okay? So here is the back of it, here's the front of it, and so what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on the larynx. So let's pick out the blue stuff first. The blue in the larynx is always the cartilage. So all you have to do is remember which one it is. So number 14 is the big one, which is which one? Thyroid. That's where your thyroid gland lives, right? Right about there. Then you have this one that's at the bottom of the larynx right here, number 23. Cricoid or cricoid, you'll hear both. That's cricoid. Cricoid pressure if you're an EMT, right?
So it's like below
the thyroid. Actually, it glues your trachea and your larynx together. You have this funny flap sticking out the top. What is that? Epiglottis on top of your glottis. Then you have to spin that around to get these other cartilages on the back side. Alright, so here's the back of your larynx. So the trick is, you're going to find the one that's curved like a hook, which is this one back here, number 43. Which one is the curvy one? The arytenoid. That's the curvy one. Number 33 is the tip of that, which is the corniculate. And then there's one further up, which you can't really see, which would be the cuneiform. I'm going to show you another picture of those. The ACC rule. A to C to C. I'll show you another view.
So it's not.
So number 5 on this model is which one? It looks like a hook. Arytenoid. Number 6 on this model is corniculate. The cuneiform, you can't really see. It's a bump further up, and it's usually further forward.
Can you see it on this?
It's never blue. You see a bump further up. So you have arytenoid, corniculate, and cuneiform would be the 3 on the back of the larynx. So far, so good? The giant larynx, where that huge one that moves, that has them shown in it. Then we're going to open this up and look inside of it. All right? Let's open. Okay, not opening. Okay, never mind. All right, open. Fine, don't open. I'll do it this way. So you have A and B. Someone tell me A versus B. A is which one? All right, so here's one of these things that are synonyms, but you can either call A vestibular fold or false vocal cord. Don't put vocal fold or something, because then that's wrong, because it's neither one. So you're either going to put vestibular, false vocal cord. Right? That way I know which one it is. Because the bottom one, B, is which one? The true vocal cord or the vocal fold. So either do vestibular and vocal folds, or do false and true vocal cord. Don't mix and match, because then I don't know what you vestibular true cord. It's like, that's nothing, right? And so the false one's on top, the true one's on the bottom. So the one I'm talking out of is B. So where is the glottis? That's the space, that's the airway. Your epiglottis covers the glottis, which is the hole between your vocal cords. So if you were to tip that up and look down it, you'd see the glottis, the space. So now we have these membranes. So you learned this rule way back when. They're named after where they go. Remember acromial, deltoid, all that stuff? So where is your thyroid hyoid membrane going to be? Between your thyroid cartilage and your hyoid bone. That one. Between my thyrohyoid membrane. Right? So let's guess where my cricotracheal would be. Between number 3 and C, that white thing there. It's between my cricoid cartilage and my tracheal cartilage. Okay. Okay, cricothyroid.
The other one.
The other one, between 3 and 2, right? Between this thing in here. Between number 3 and number 2, because this is cricothyroid. So if you basically remember to name the 2 parts, you can name the ligaments, right? Cricothyroid, cricotracheal, and thyrohyoid. Naming the things between them.
So they're ligaments and membrane.
I learned this was a ligament, and it is. I don't know why they made it a membrane. Some doctor did something. I don't know. I'm just a biologist. I don't know why they changed the name. It makes sense to me. I don't have to look.
We can call the other one.
Membrane, yes. They're synonyms. So number 15 is a favorite word on the quiz. Always appears on every quiz.
Laryngeal prominence.
Laryngeal prominence, which is fancy speak for Adam's apple, but that's your laryngeal prominence. Right.
So is that just like the tip of the thyroid?
That's the tip of the thyroid gland. That's what makes your Adam's apple stick out. So, key thing on the larynx is learn the blue parts, then name the white parts between the blue parts. That's pretty much 90% of the larynx, is naming the cartilages and what's between them. Yeah.
If the prominence was on, would you say specifically like name this structure?
Name this bump sticking out. Yep.
How come some people have a really big one?
Hormones. So men have a deeper voice because our larynx grows more because of testosterone. So everything grows, including the prominence sticks out more. So men have an Adam's apple, women tend not to because your voice is higher. So generally, the main reason. Things can affect it, like smoking makes it because it causes damage. So smokers get that raspy cocktail waitress voice because that begins to grow. Smoking will kill you. Make sense? Let's keep going down. Life gets ugly now.
Life looks fine.
Alright, that'll be number 9. Trachea, very good. So we're going to zip down to a thing that's not in your book, but it's right here. That little V there is the carina. And then what you're going to do is remember your 232. That every time tubes split, you rename them, right? Aorta, brachioscopic. Okay, so I have 1 trachea, 11 and 12 were a bifurcation. So what's 11 and 12 going to be? Primary bronchus, or bronchi. You can say also main, they're legits. So I have 1 trachea that becomes 1 set of primary bronchi, the first term. Each of those splits again, number 14. Therefore, those are secondary, also called lobars, because 1 for each lobe. Right? But you can just do 1 and 2. That's perfectly fine. And if you follow along, these will split again. What do you call them? They split a 3rd time. Tertiary, also called segmentals. So it's 1, 2, and 3. It's the splits. Right? 1 trachea, 2 primaries, and so on and so forth. Right? Then the bronchioles would be so small you can't see them on model. They'd be the microscopic ends of the bronchi. So bronchus is the big thing. The bronchioles are the small thing. A lot of this other stuff you'd have to see on a slide. But we can learn about the lungs while we're here. Let's look at some lung pages stuff. So someone tell me where the hilum is.
Where the stuff goes in.
Where the stuff goes in, that's this little kidney bean shape where the stuff goes in. That's the hilum. You had that with the lymph node last term, right? All that stuff, so the hilum. So where's the base and where's the apex?
Apex is
Base is the bottom, apex is the point, so 17 would be the apex, 19 is like at the base. The costal surface is where? Outside, that's where your ribs would be, right? That's on the costal sides. Cardiac notch, can anyone guess where that is? That's over here, that's where your heart would stick in, it makes a little notch. So your cardiac notch is on the left lung, that's where your heart lives. And that changes the biology enough that you end up on the lobes. How many lobes on the right lung? 3. How many on the left?
2.
Because your heart took 1 away, so you put the heart there, right? So there's only 2 lobes here, but there are 3 here because of the heart taking up 1. Yes?
Are there lobes for like a surface area kind of thing?
Yes, more or less. Each lung is subdivided, partly so 1 lobe can give up, the other lobe can keep going. So I've been evil sometimes. I'm going to borrow your lung. I have randomly just held a lung up on a quiz and say, is this a right or a left? And then you would count the number of lobes to figure that question out, because that would tell you right and left. Yeah.
Did you say that? Sorry, the hilum is just the spot where the bronchial.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Basically.
The plumbing comes in as a hilum.
Which one is the hilus?
Same thing. Hilum and hilus are synonyms. They're just what I said.
Do you know what that
I'll have to look it up. I don't know off the top of my head. Okay, on our long lobes. Because what's between the lobes? What do you call these lines?
Fissures.
Fissures. So we have horizontal and oblique. So oblique would be angled, horizontal. So this doesn't show it real well, but there's two fissures on the right lung. It's just your lobes. One fissure on the left lung. So your models actually show them a little better than that picture. Then you know about pleura from 231. You know about a diaphragm from 231. That pretty much covers our big stuff. We're going to do histology now. Well, let's go to JDOT and learn some histology. I will definitely have a microscope on Thursday. Like an evil bastard. So here's a slide showing some part of your respiratory system. So the thing you want to get used to are the layers of the system, because we repeat these when we do digestion. So you're going to get used to naming the layers of these tissues. So what do you call the middle where you see all the light and there's nothing there?
Lumen.
Lumen, because it illuminates, right? It's bright to a Roman. So this is the lumen layer. There's always a layer, in this case it's this color here, that touches the lumen. It's right here. What is that layer that touches the lumen called? Mucosa.
Okay.
Because it makes snot, right? But that's your mucosal layer, no matter where you are. All right. Now, from this red line here to here, what do you call that layer? Submucosa, because it's below the mucosa, like a submarine. So I have lumen, mucosa, submucosa. What do you call the layer that's outside the submucosa that would glue it into your body? Adventitia. So every part of the respiratory system would have these layers of a lumen with the areas, a mucosa, a submucosa, and an adventitia. Yes.
What website is this?
JDOT.
And similar to what we'll see under the.
I hope so. That's why you have to look at your microscope, right? But this is showing the layers. Right? It's just a room of There's a close-up showing layers. Quiz question number 1. What layer is this? Mucosa. What layer is this? Very good. What layer is this? Yay! The adventitious off screen. Yeah.
Can you see the C-shaped rings and the trachealis muscle and all that stuff?
I will when I change my slide, yes.
Oh,
You can.
sorry. Okay.
I'm just doing those for now. So do okay on the basic layers. Because that doesn't matter if it's a trachea, a bronchus, or anything. They're all the same layers. And now what you have to do is figure out what you're looking at. So I'm going to find you a trachea. Okay. Here. I have to go back. Hold on, that block for just a second. Alright, think on the left. Anyone guess what that is? A trachea. How would I know other than the fact it says somewhere down here? Okay. Alright, so I notice there's these big rings, which are the cartilage, so it makes a C ring. Big. This is your esophagus behind it. That's going to be your trachea. Big C-shaped rings on the front of your esophagus. But you notice you still see the same layers. So I still see a lumen, I see a mucosa, I see a submucosa and adventitia. So the layers are there, just really big cartilage. Right, so let's go through the tissues you're going to find in those layers. If I zoom in on the mucosa, what do I find? ECC, because you'll learn that 231, right? That should not be a surprise. Let me do that. Let me zoom in on here. Here's a big close-up. So lumen's over here. Mucosa, hey, look, hairs. So my mucosa is the PCC, pseudostratified ciliary columnar epithelium, right? Submucosa, what's this? That's cartilage, right? So I see some cartilage, there'd be some connective tissue. That's all in the submucosa into town. So it's hyaline cartilage. Okay. I'm going to try finding you a seromucous gland on this picture. I find you a seromucous gland. A second here. I'm seeing it. I lost my seromucus gland. Yeah. Give me a second. I can't make this one much bigger. Sorry, so I have to squint. But this is my trachea. Here's my mucosa. Submucosa. So notice the glands appear in the submucosa. They look just like a sweat gland did in 231. They're in the submucosa underneath the mucosa. The seromucous glands.
That's on your website.
Yes. For those trivia, does anyone know what seromucus literally means? Serous fluid is water, mucus is snot, watery snot. Okay? That's what's in your throat, is that kind of watery, mucusy stuff. Let's find a lung. All right. You're going to hate me for this. You really are. The reason you're going to hate me is because you have to use some interpretation to understand what you're looking at. So, what is that? Whole thing. The lung, because these are the air sacs, right? The whole thing is one giant lung. So what we're looking at is we're looking at the tubing in the lung, like right here. Big tube inside your lung. So what we call the microscopic tubes inside a lung. Bronchioles. These are the bronchioles. These are the alveoli, the air sacs. These are the bronchioles, the little tubes that are microscopic. The problem is you have to be able to discern that. So what do you call the empty space in the middle of a tube? They still have a lumen that you're seeing from the side. The bronchioles that are microscopic, carrying the air from the bronchi, the big tubes, down into the air sacs, the little thing. Right? So, this is a bronchiole. This little round thing right there, or there, what are those? Alveoli. Those are the air sacs. Right here. Right here. Okay, now the problem is, you notice there's some other words here dealing with alveoli. There's an alveolar sac and the alveolar duct. All right. Let me draw you as a bad picture, and then I'll go back to this JDoc one.
You're drawing a picture?
I'm going to draw a picture.
Oh, shit.
I can't draw, right? So you just have to see later. Okay. Ride the Beaverton sometime and go in the suburbs. You will see roads that look like this. They'll have a road and then a cul-de-sac, right? And then we'll get fine. So, the little dead end area is like a cul-de-sac. We call that the alveolar sac, because it's the end of a bunch of alveoli. The alveoli are the little grapes that circle that. Think of the house on the cul-de-sac. What do you call this tube that gets you to the cul-de-sac? An alveolar duct. Because it's a tube to the sac where these sacs live. Okay. What do you call this tube that gets you to an alveolar duct?
Bronchiole.
That's a bronchiole. It's a respiratory bronchiole because it's thin getting to my house. There's also a tube getting to that one, and that's the terminal bronchiole. So a terminal bronchiole becomes a respiratory bronchiole, which becomes an alveolar duct, which becomes an alveolar sac, which becomes an alveolus. Which makes sense to me if I drive a Beaverton, which I don't. Right?
And the terminal is not on the histology portion because it's large enough. Is it on the model or not?
Is terminal not on there?
It could be, but
It's not. On there? Okay.
Is it on the other?
Is it on the other one? Yeah. I know it's on there somewhere. Terminal bronchioles, yeah.
But the terminal is microscopic.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
should be on this side.
So what I'm going to do, just to be obnoxious there.
Wait, quick question.
Yes.
Are terminal bronchioles microscopic?
Yes.
Goes
Yes.
to-
So let's go through this picture again, based upon what I drew. It's easier to start backwards. Right? So if I go up to this dead end here with these little air sacs stuck on it, what do you call that end that can't drive out? That's the alveolar sac, because those are the alveoli around it. Therefore, this tube here would have to have been what? Alveolar duct, right? Right in here. And then this would be my bronchiole. So notice how this bronchiole here is thinner and this one's thicker. This one's thin enough to do diffusion. This one doesn't. So this is respiratory on this side, terminal on this side. So I start here, go here to there. I have terminal to respiratory to duct to sac, basically in that tube. It's a judgment call. You're looking at basically the structure and the thickness. Okay. So terminal is definitely here, respiratory is definitely here, duct is about here-ish, sac's there.
So where's that? Oh, okay, where is that on the list that you were saying?
On the second page.
So page 4 at the bottom.
Oh.
So what if we weren't looking at a bronchiole or anything? What if we're just given like the portion right above it?
And then you have to do some judgment calls. So on this close-up, this is terminal because it's really thick. This is respiratory because it's really thin, but notice it's just a tube. There's no air sac shit on it. Air sacs are up here. So respiratory terminal. There we go. Here's a classic picture. Let's start on this end again. What do you think this is? The sac, because I see the houses around it, the little circles. These are alveoli, each little broken circle. Therefore, that must be a cul-de-sac, alveolar sac. This tube here got you there. That must be the alveolar duct. This is a bigger tube getting there. Respiratory bronchiole. This is a really bigger tube. Terminal bronchiole, and the bronchi would be further upstream. Yes. Usually, yeah, you're going to see more plumbing on the terminal end. This is simply going to be air sacs around a tube, right? So it's a judgment call. I mean, there's no clear line, but you can see the difference between a sac, a duct, and the bronchioles. Right.
So what if you were to give me something that was like, it was just like here, and none of that
Then you just say alveoli, because all you can see are the air sacs. You can't see the tubing to them. I could be as evil as I want. But if all you saw were these circles, you just say alveoli, because they're just air sacs. But if you see tubing going in and out of them, like here, those are going to be bronchioles or bronchi or something like that.
So then the alveolar sac just corresponds to the cul-de-sac and the alveoli.
Right.
So anything that is an air sac is alveoli.
Right, so all that happened, these alveoli have been nicked by the slice. So these are the alveoli with the lots around the residential spots. So I'll show you another version of this, just to get your bearings here. That was the same name? Should, right? Right, so here I have two alveolar ducts, because these are the sacs here, there's kind of a sac here, there's a little sac here, and then this would be the duct, and then my bronchioles thereof. So it's like driving in a subdivision, you keep hitting these dead ends, that has to be the sac and the duct. Wherever you drove in and from is the bronchiole. It's a silly analogy, but it works.
The hardest part is telling the difference between the duct and the respiratory.
Right, and it's subtle, but the duct, on this one, the duct is from here to there, because I notice the tissue change right there. That means I'm in a bronchiole, because I see that little darker spot. So the duct is only this big here. On this one, the duct is about from here to here, because I can see the dark spot there. So it's really subtle. Now, traditionally, a duct would also have little notches in the side where the alveoli are, whereas the bronchioles tend to have fewer of them. I would not be so mean as to put the pointer there and say, pick one. As long as you didn't say bronchus or trachea, I'm okay. I could be mean. Just like your quiz. Right. But you want to practice that bronchial duct sac thing. I'll do one more, just to beat you one more time. So let's do this one. Someone point to an alveolar sac for me.
Left.
Left. Where on the left?
No
Right here? Yeah, because it looks like houses around a cul-de-sac, right? And there's also one basically over here. Here, actually, there's one here. So now this one actually shows some plumbing. So right about here would be the duct, right? And then bronchial will be. So this is very short. This is a very bronchial. The duct is very, very small. You get the idea that you're looking for the sac and the duct and working backwards. Yeah.
So at what point does the tissue change happen from pseudostratified, so PCC to simple squamous?
So traditionally, it's simple squamous in the anything's respiratory. So the respiratory bronchial, the alveolar ducts, that's where gases go. That's going to be simple. Anything further upstream than them is not going to be simple. That's why they don't do gas exchange there. They don't have a thin lining. That's why you can see it's thicker too. Those are all going to be PCC. They're just too big. They don't actually be gases. Makes sense in histology? So you want to practice different slides, like can you find the ducts, the bronchioles, and all that. I'll do one more random slide at you here. It's like an evil way. Is this an alveolar duct or sac? Neither. It's neither. What is that?
That's the trachea.
Well, it's not actually a trachea in this case. It's a bronchus. That's not a bronchiole. Right? That's not on your list. Because the reason I know that is that sure is thick. Right? It's got all those layers. I don't see any air sacs on it. So this is not the things you're looking for. You're naming all this little stuff out here. If you're on a slide, you see a big tube, that's going to be a bronchus, not a bronchiole. The bronchiole is going to be microscopic little things, not the big, huge stuff. Okay. So just because you find a big round thing doesn't mean it's one of your answers.
Is that going to be, like, that's not on our list?
That's not on your list. I'm just showing big A. Okay. Do this one here. I don't know now. Let's try this one. So on these ones, right? These ones are bronchioles. They're smaller than the last picture. You can't see all the layers. You only see one layer. You don't see all the other. Don't see submucosa. So these are going to be bronchioles. These are going to be terminals. And later on, you can see the ducts and the sacs down here. Okay. So on the quiz, if it's a big, huge thing, the only thing you have to know on a slide is trachea. Right? But if it's a small thing, then you have these other words you have to throw out. Make sense? Yeah. Make sense? So spend some time on the slides, because they will throw you for a loop more than once. I'm going to be quiet, so you can do the rest of your lab. Whatever you decide to do. Did your time? Why is there a plate?
I don't know, I need to.
Rhombus, that was the big one.
That's the big thing. Yeah. Just like the one that did. Respiratory. Right there. And then J-Doc was the slide. Because your sections are going away. Very few people are signing up.
Wait, we say open lab?
We know for class, we're losing sections. Enrollment's down 15%.
No, this is one of the sites that has.
Like students. There are fewer students taking classes. So, hence there's fewer demand for different my class. But enrollment dropped about 15% last year.
So I'll just show up
Very good.
to his lab tomorrow.
You don't have to because you're in the lab today.
What if it's tomorrow?
You won't. I'll tell him no. I'll let him know you're in. Yeah.
And then I'll go that earlier.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, sounds cool. All right. Alright, you doing okay?
Monday's 10 to 11 to 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. You've been in JDOC? Just go to my website, which is on. Just go there. And then I have go underneath my slide picture. There's all these links. I use JDOC. I use the Palomar one. So you have the login rating. Yeah, so you want 60.